We're focusing on our single story. We have created this platform just so you guys could share your single stories as well, because we want to hear y'all single stories. We do. And we know that single stories are hard. People all the time believe what they have been told without hearing the full story. I mean, someone could tell one side of a story, just one single story, without giving your perspective or without giving your side, and it feels like that's become part of your identity. And it hurts. It really does. It could cause trauma, depression, low self-esteem. It could also make you feel that your voice is silenced.
And with what you said about changing an identity, I just find it super ironic how DPS was trying to make us out to seem malicious or selfish. Whole time, they were using DPS dollars when they could have been addressing the education gap. They were using money to harass former DPS students. And I feel like that just shows a lot about their character. I'm Janelle.
I'm KALIAH.
I'm DAHNI, and we are
No Justice, No Peace.
An Unrestricted Revolution. In the last episode, we talked a little bit about what we did for Youth Violence Prevention Week, and we also talked about the town hall that we hosted with people from our community.
And these last few weeks, we've had some super productive conversations with students and other youth in our communities who have experiences with trauma and chose to resort to leadership. They're super desperate to find the solutions to the problems that are going on within their communities, just like us.
And even though we're about to graduate, I honestly feel like there's a lot of students in our community and at our school that are really willing to carry on the torch and collaborate with us in the work that we've done over the years and just kind of keep this momentum going.
And when it comes to finding solutions for any kind of issue, it takes multiple perspectives and people with different experiences. And we all go to school in the same community, and we have different families, we have different upbringings, including coming from different states sometimes.
Mm-hmm. So even if it's controversial or complicated, we cannot shut out students who have involvement with experiences with trauma, have lost friends to violence, have family in gangs, and just, other things around the subject. But before we go any further, we have to read our trigger alert.
If you are not 110% in support of Black Minds Matter, please dismiss yourself. If you are in any sort of agreement with the systematic oppressions this country has inflicted on minorities, once again, please dismiss yourself. And if you are not willing to give every bit of the power that the people so undeniably deserve, then please dismiss yourself. because in a few moments you'll witness vast amounts of Black engagement. And if you do not dismiss yourself, then the thoughts, facts, and feelings we are about to share will most definitely dismiss you.
Period. And, I know we usually go about our conversations in a way that's more community and whole group based rather than as individuals. But, as the students of the past and present of the Far Northeast, we've all kind of been impacted one way or another by youth violence. So I just want to start and ask you guys, what's your experience with violence in the community and what impact has it had on you?
Yeah, so that brings me back to what happened a couple years ago when we had that student Chico that passed away at our school, or that was, murdered at our school. And it was very upsetting to me just because I've been knowing Chico for a really long time. We went to middle school together. I've been watching him grow up since 4th grade, and I know that what he wanted to do with his life, where he was going, and just his goals and aspirations. So it was just really sad to see that happen, and it just made me think about like the other students who have been passing away in our community.
More so for me, how it's impacted me is seeing like through my little sister, because like you were talking about with Chico, she was really close to him, and she also had a cousin named Davari who passed away due to gun violence. And just seeing your family go through, that stress and, the depressions that come along with losing someone that you're really close to. It was hard for me because I saw her gravitate towards a lifestyle that, she was never on the path to be on. And it did low-key cause a lot of indirect trauma for me because it's like I was wondering like, what I could have did as a sister, to guide her more and to support her and help her. So just seeing like all the people in our communities that have really been going through it due to the violence, I say, yeah.
I definitely agree with what both of you guys have said, and I will say for me too, it's kind of more of a like mental health perspective because in my situation, I've never really been that closely involved with people who have like maybe have been involved in the violence, but it's still like that fear that I could just be going to school, going about my day, and then there will be a lockdown and we'll be in class for 4 hours because something's going on in the community. And even in the past, there were kids, like I know there was a girl where she was just hanging out with one of her friends like a street away from the school, but she got shot because of who she was with and she wasn't involved in anything. And it's just really hard thinking like, we're required by law to be in school, and as people, we have to be in community to like just to live. And it's just hard knowing that like any day could be your last because of really unpreventable violence. And just especially with like how you said with your sister, just thinking about my younger siblings and how just a few days ago at Florida Pitt Waller, the school they go to, they weren't there that day, but there was a guy nearby who had a gun, and they all had to evacuate. And just thinking like the shock of initially thinking that my siblings were in that situation was just like you really do feel hopeless, and it's just really hard to deal with, I think.
I know one thing that I specifically did, because even like when Chico passed away, I had a lot of friends that were really close to Chico as well. And today they're still struggling, trying to get by with understanding like what really happened to Chico. And I know it's really hard. And I know for me, something that I was thinking just to cope with it and trying to help like other kids who are going through similar issues is I joined the youth violence prevention team. So that's what I was working for. And it was just a way to like put out there like different resources where students could go to instead of engaging in violence in their communities. But there's still so much to do.
And really quick, when you were talking, KALIAH, that reminded me, like when you said shock, I just remember being at, I think it was the birthday party after my birthday party, but we had it, I introduced these two girls to my auntie so that they could rent out her space for the party. And that night, like 2 people ended up getting shot outside of the party. But I remember like I was in the back and I heard the gunshots, or maybe I was in the front and I heard gunshots, everybody heard them, and everybody just started like darting towards the back. And I remember like sprinting and just wondering, 1, am I gonna get trampled by this crowd of people that's trying to all run down this hallway? 2, like what is going on outside? Am I gonna be able to make it out of here? If I run outside, like who's gonna be out there? What's going on? And then 3, the person I was dating at the time, I couldn't find him. And just like the struggle that I was going through mentally wondering like if he was outside, if that could have been him, like everything that's going on. And that was very much traumatizing. And it's just to think, like, obviously he was okay, but just to think for someone to have to go through that and, you know, going through that initial search of, did something happen to the person, like someone that I really am close to or that I love, and it actually being true that something did really happen. I couldn't really imagine having to go through that, and to think that so many people in our community right now are facing that. It's really disheartening.
It's just like hard to think too about like just like what state of the world we're in, because like especially because we're 18, technically adults. Like, you know, we've been going through this for a while. Like technically, I don't feel like it, but like
legally adults.
legally, you know. But like, you know, really, how many young kids are going through this right now? And it's like, you know, it's kind of always been a part of our childhoods with like the age of school shootings and like practices going on, but like just how much more relevant it's becoming. It's like, what kind of world are we living in?
Right. And speaking of that, what do you guys think is going on, like, as to why all this violence is happening?
I would say, I feel like a big part of it, because like, you know, whatever stresses there are in the world, it kind of reflects on the students, where it's like, you know, if people are struggling at home, then they're going to bring it into work, they're going to bring it into school, they're going to bring it into society as a whole. And, you know, people are always going through things, not saying that that's an excuse, but I feel like it's just, you know, not only the accessibility to guns, you know, how much violence is promoted and how solutions aren't really promoted as much. And I just think all of these different circumstances of like how easy it is to commit violence, the lack of accountability for those who commit violence, the lack of protection, they all kind of play into like all of these public attacks that we're seeing.
Right. And going off of what you said, I just think that people are not prioritizing safety enough. Like, in school districts, safety is not prioritized. Students have easy access to guns, you know, and then on top of that, these students that have access to the things that help them commit violence, they are traumatized and have absolutely no outlets for their mental health and the things that they're going through. They don't really, like you said, when you were going through the realization of Chico's passing, you joined the youth violence prevention group, but not everybody has those resources or even knows about programs like that to be able to move away from all the things that are happening. And it's happening, like you said, so frequently in our community. So,
and I'm really glad you made that point, because it kind of just like points out what I really want to say next. Also, you kind of touched on it a little bit before, and I touched on it a little bit before in a previous episode, but when we had the Youth Violence Prevention Week and we held that discussion with the youth, there was youth saying that like where they're getting these weapons and why it's so accessible to them. And they're talking about how they can't really trust the adults in their community, because the adults in their community are the ones that are giving them the weapons, trying to make profit. So it's really people, or just adults in general, keep putting these resources into the youth community, and the youth is using them.
And what you said about making profit, it makes me think about another reason as to why all of this is happening. Like, our society is so desensitized to the idea of like humanity and, you know, people just being kind to each other, people genuinely caring, people being able to have personal connections, especially with social media and how everything has to be a trend, and, you know, there's things that are cool, things that aren't cool. And for some reason, violence and being aggressive has become something that's so like
Normalized.
right. So yeah.
Like, I also feel like I agree with that too, and I think I brought up in a previous episode where it's also like, I guess, less care towards taking care of the children in our community, because you know, I think I said before too, but it takes a village to raise a child. And I feel like, you know, of course there might be some adults in schools that are willing to protect students. Like they have this thing where like they ask students like, do you have somebody in the building you feel safe talking to? And most students may have that, but it's also going further and having adults who are willing to, like, you know, maybe not overstep, but go to the point where they make sure you're not in danger, make sure that like you're not putting yourself in harm's way. And I feel like the problem is, you know, because there are different influences everywhere that can turn kids in the different directions. But I feel like there's too many adults who are willing to take advantage of kids, whether it's money, whether it's influence, whether it's manipulating them. There are too many adults in our community who are willing to kind of put kids on the wrong track for their own self-benefit. And I feel like, you know, that's kind of a whole issue in itself of holding adults responsible for how they interact with children. But I feel like we need a more balance, because we have plenty of people in our community like Coach I, Sims Fayola, or the Sims Fayola Foundation, and, you know, different people from different organizations like Struggle and Love who are doing that work. But it really comes down to the average adult, you know, taking care of not just their children, but children in the community as a whole, and really not letting everyone fall behind.
And not so much being children's friends, like in the panel when they were like, well, I just think that a lot of adults, instead of raising children, they want to be their friends, and it's like children raising children. And especially with how today's, you know, things are going right now, and a lot of people having kids and youth at that, it's like we need to put a lot of intention on those future generations and helping those youth be able to raise their children properly, and, you know, have them understand discipline, have them understand integrity, respect, and like the basic morals that I feel like our community has definitely lost grip with.
I agree. It's more of like adults trying to be youth's friend instead of being role models. And I'm just curious, I know, Janelle, you've been out of high school for a little while now, and KALIAH, we're
Don't make me feel
almost
old.
done. We're almost done with high school ourselves. Kudos to us for graduating Friday.
Big class of 2023.
I'm so old.
But I was just wondering, did you guys, or did you, when you were in school, and like you, KALIAH, did you feel safe when you were in the school knowing that a student could be carrying a gun around them, or knives, or just any weapon?
I mean, I would say for me personally, I always kind of felt this sense of like divine protection, because I'm just like, God is not gonna have me going through all this stuff that I'm going through and then I'm just unalived. Like, but with that being said, one, it's not really a good thing to be desensitized to the things that are going on around you. But I would say my fear mostly came like around the summer, and it wasn't necessarily for me because my parents were really strict. They weren't letting me leave the house, not even to walk to Walgreens. But it was like for the community, like all these students that have access to weapons and are going out, going to parties, having fun, like who was going to be at those parties? Was my little sister going to be at one of those parties? And I'm just like, I feel like a really empathetic person, so I feel a lot of emotions and the things that are going on around me so deeply, like more than I feel like the average person would. So that definitely, I had like fear of what type of mental state that was going to put me in. So yeah.
I definitely agree, especially in the sense of like anxiety, where, you know, especially as young kids, I don't think we should ever live in a world where like little kindergartners, first, second, third graders are used to having to huddle in the corner a few times a month or every other month, because they know what it means. And I would say, especially going to desensitization too, like once you're in high school, you kind of already know what the deal. And actually makes me think of what they said on the panel too, where one of the students was saying that at this point, everybody knows how drills go. So at this point, if the shooter is a student at the school, they kind of know those prevention methods that are already there, and the need to revamp that system. And it just brings me back to last year when I was a junior, when I was still on campus. I was in a class with me and my friend, and she has pretty bad anxiety. And we had a drill. And I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of times during drills, a lot of people don't know that because they want you to act as if it's a real scenario. And in my position, like I could text certain people and be like, hey, is this a drill? Is this not a drill? And I would know. But it's still really scary. And like my friend, she would be having like a panic attack just because she was so stressed out about she didn't know if it was real or not. And it kind of got to the point where like, if we're the only people, me and her were like kind of freaking out. Like if it gets to the point where we're the only people in the room who are freaking out about the potential of being shot and like even being looked at like it's just a drill or like it's just a school shooting drill, like that sentence, it's just a school shooting drill.
Yeah.
Like what type of dystopian world are we living in where that's like just normal? And like I will say, it just affected my everyday experience. It's one of the reasons why I'm off campus right now. It's because like You know, it's not always in the back of my head, but it's always a stressor knowing, like, walking into school, you could be forced into that situation.
And I just know, like, personally for me, I don't really know if I could even say I really feel safe when I'm at the school, just because, like, there's so many school shootings nowadays. So many. Like, previously what just happened with East High School, or what happened with your sibling's school recently, a couple days ago. There's so many school shootings. There's so many people who are just out there trying to harm students. It's just really sad, and I don't really know if I'm safe.
Yeah, and I just feel like there is really not only our responsibility as the new adults to really put a pause to what this world is becoming, because, you know, we already have activists like March for Our Lives who have grown up in this generation of having to not only experience school shootings, losing their friends, but also, you know, having to fight with politicians over their right for their lives, which is just another thing too, where, you know, we can talk as a group and it's really beneficial too, but as a new generation, we also need to be the ones creating laws that make it harder for people to have guns in our communities, to make it harder for people to commit violence. And I just feel like as we go forward, it's so important that we take our fears in school and make sure that we don't just forget them once we're out of school, but make it better and make sure that the future students don't have to have that fear.
Right.
And we're gonna continue this conversation right after a quick break. Okay.
Mental health is key. What advice you wish you had at a younger age about keeping your mental health intact to be dealing with the things that we deal with today?
I'll probably say being able to open up more to people around you instead of bottling everything up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like open up more and not being so aggressive. You know?
Yeah, I've been telling y'all all day, man. Y'all gotta be vulnerable. You gotta allow yourself to let people in. Cause if you like you said, if you're not letting it out, it's gonna bottle it up. That's gonna build that anger inside of you, and that's not the mental health we need. So take care of yourselves first. Go get somebody to talk to.
Do I think there's a problem with youth violence? Yes. Personally, yes. But I don't know. The young guys are gonna have to get in their heads that, you know, there's different routes for you to go about things. So there's different avenues that these youngins, people my age, that we can take, but we're not realizing it. So that's why we need to get together as a community, as Black people, to figure all that out.
Save your money. Save your money. I had a job, been having a job since I was 15, so definitely save the money for, getting a house, buying my own car, things like that. I probably would have saved. Ask for support. If you're feeling some type of way. I work in mental health now, so I totally understand this. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to tell somebody what's going on. Focus on school. Don't worry about nothing else. And if you need help, ask for it. Definitely would have asked for some more help. Because I did not do good in school, and I was acting a fool for a little while. But I got it together. Got my degree, stuff like that later on. But during high school, definitely would have did better.
And we are back. And really quick, we just love to thank our sponsor, The Power of One. You just saw their amazing commercial. And just getting back into the conversation, you know, with our experience as students, with the people who are higher up in DPS, who are really responsible for trying to make our schools safer, how do you think they should be held accountable for that responsibility of having the safety of so many students?
I honestly don't even know where to start with DPS because I don't know who would hold them accountable. Like, they have such, like, every single person in leadership there that I've talked to has, like, this ego and, you know, pride of things that they're not doing. Like, our school district should not be like this. Our students' education should not be like this. We should definitely have more, Black history inclusion, BIPOC inclusion within our curriculums, and it should be something that's pushed. But you can kind of tell that they don't really care about our well-being. Like, I feel like school and what they're doing just has to do with money, like the economy and capitalism.
Oof, don't get me started.
She said, don't get me started. But I genuinely think that they don't care. One thing that got brought to my knowledge when we did that, I don't know what it was called.
The round table?
Yeah. Wait, was it around the last Zoom that we did when we talked about the safety plan?
Oh, yeah. It was a town hall, I think.
So, yeah, when we were doing our last town hall, it came to my realization that DPS is actually, districts are actually responsible for the things that students do inside of the schools and outside of the schools. And I think that that's a big thing that nobody really knows about and that more people should know about, because they don't put the prioritization into seeing what's going on within our community, seeing what's going on with these students, and really trying to be proactive about making sure that we're safe. Like, I'm not gonna say who, but somebody that's really close to me literally got jumped 4 times within 48 hours by the same girls, and they go to
I'm with Janelle. I think the district has, or people within the district have such a big ego. It's like you can't really tell them anything because there will be a lot of like
Backlash.
She said lashback. Y'all understood what I meant. There's so much backlash. Like, you could say one thing about, I don't even know who's in charge of safety anymore because it's not really talked about within our schools.
Right.
And so, I don't know. There's just so much going on with DPS that needs to be fixed in order to adequately help their students or just be there for their students.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And also, I'm glad you brought up the town hall, because if you guys don't know, the superintendent released his first draft of the DPS safety plan, and it's like 45 pages long. Like, it's thick. We read the whole thing though, and we presented at the town hall and just talked about the few of the things we saw, including, you know, the policies and things that the district are supposed to follow, you know, kind of these different protocols that they're supposed to follow.
Supposed to.
Yeah, emphasis on supposed to. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, it's a lot of, I think specifically too, we were researching and we saw 2 different acts that they mentioned. I think it was the Claire Davis Act, I believe, where basically the district, if they find that, you know, a tragedy within a school could have been preventable, then they're financially responsible for rewarding the victims. Like, let's say...
Really?
Yeah. Where, like, I think it said that if they investigate and they find that the school could have, or the district could have prevented, let's say, a shooting from happening, they have to financially compensate, or at least under the law, they have to financially compensate the victims. And, like, it makes you think about so many, well, especially, you know, in national instances such as Parkland, Columbine, Sandy Hook, so many of these issues where it was more involved in gun violence, but specifically in DPS where, you know, there are so many instances of violence in our community that may not lead to deaths all the time, but that could still be easily prevented. And I think it was just interesting that they included that in the safety plan, because it's kind of one of those things where, like, nobody really knows that they're supposed to follow it because we know that they're not following it. And just a lot of different things where the safety plan, I think in essence it's a good idea, but it's more about practice.
Right.
Because, like, most of those ideas, such as, you know, feedback loops, having the things that we suggested, like having certain certifications for, like, deans when it comes to searches, all these different things that are supposed to make communities safer need to actually be practiced. And that's how we hold them responsible because we have this evidence of what DPS is supposed to be doing. Right. And now we can say, what are you doing about this? What are you doing about that?
And I think that our community actually needs the space to be able to have those conversations to where, like, there's some type of action behind. I don't know who the higher ups for DPS are, but to where the community is able to speak directly to them, and there is a consequence that everybody is aware of, you know, as an accountability practice for the things that they are and what's supposed to be and are not doing.
And I kind of want to bring it back to the conversation we were having it before and tie into before the break and tie into what we're talking about now. I was just wondering, how do you think stress in school and stress in home contributes to violence that is happening within the schools?
So, like I mentioned earlier, I feel like youth not having the outlets for that stress is definitely contributing, because they feel like they're just at these, like, I forget what the word actually is, but, you know, high tension, and it's like kind of like when you have anxiety and you're easily provoked by a lot of stuff.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, kind of. And, like, due to all the things that they're experiencing. So when they have that plus the influence of social media that tells them, like, oh, if somebody does this, this, and this to you, this is the proper way for you to handle it. Like, you got to handle your business. You got to do this. You got to do that. And it always just results around violence and hurting our community and hurting our people. I
agree. And also, before I forget, I want to build on that too. But I feel like it's also about outlets. Because I know, like, especially when it comes to youth violence prevention, a lot of people want to take, like, a non-violence approach. Like, all violence is bad. And, like, I agree, most forms of violence are bad. I'm not going to get into that. But I feel like, when, like, it, like, just all human emotions, violence, or at least anger, is natural. And I feel like all of these instances happen when people kind of hold in their violence. Because, like, you know, there are different outlets to channel your anger rather than physically hurting another person. Like, I know there are people who box and, you know, spar when, like, oh, I'm really angry, I'm gonna go to the gym, instead of taking it out on my family or my friends. Oh, I had a really bad day, I'm gonna go play basketball instead of just being pissed all day. It's like, there are so many opportunities that people can let out their emotions, but the problem is, number one, promoting them and how accessible they are. Like, a lot of people don't have access to a gym where they can box. I know in our community, like, people have access to basketball, but everybody has different outlets where they can let out their energy. And I feel like on top of just preventing violence in the first place, we need to instill these things that allow people to deal with their emotions in a healthy way before they have to take it out on other people.
And really learn what it means to be able to express your emotions, like social emotional learning, something that schools have in their curriculum. But I know for me, I didn't even know what my SEL class was until my senior year. Mind you, this is after 3.5 years of being in those classes and thinking of them as a study hall, but to think it's like social emotional learning is so important and really is just as important as our academics, but it's not something that's prioritized, not something that's emphasized. So I just find it really funny, like, how a district can have a whole 45-page safety plan, but isn't even making sure that their social emotional learning classes have, you know, intentionality put behind them. Like, teachers are not making lesson plans for those classes. A lot of students don't even know what they're supposed to be doing. They use it as a ditch period, time to listen to music, take a nap, study. So, yeah.
I definitely agree with that, because there's still so many students who don't know what an SEL class is really for. I mean, in my SEL class, the teacher was like, how are grades? How are your grades? And we're like, good.
How is my mental
y'all want to play Uno? So that's that was literally my SEL class. It's just playing Uno.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like just bringing it back to school too, like, I feel like, number one, school should be a place of learning, but it also should be a place for students to feel safe. And I feel like it also brings back to the people who are available. Because I know in DMOK, when we were there were a good few people that we could go talk to about our emotions without feeling like we were going to be put in trouble, or like they would be like, well, don't do this, don't do that. It was kind of like, for me, I have a lot of people who I can go to if I'm feeling a certain way, so I don't have to take it out in a way that's not productive.
Right.
And I feel like in school it's so important to have those people there, because if you let's say you get in trouble at home or something bad happens at home, and you come home and you come to school angry, and then your teacher yells at you because you have an attitude, and you get sent to the dean, and then they talk to you about having attitude, and then they call your mom, and your mom's mad at you about having attitude, and then you come home and the cycle continues all over again. I feel like specifically in school there needs to be a way to meet a student where they're out and not try to force them out of their emotions, and just try to understand them before you just make it worse.
Right. But I do want to ask, if someone hasn't had experience with youth violence, how do you think that they'll be able to show empathy to someone who has? Like, what are ways that they could?
That's a good question.
I really think, just going back to the SEL class, I feel like that should be an opportunity where teachers are actually there and being able to provide for students who are having these issues, and just being able to like talk to them and really like let them express their emotions. I also know that DPS has lots of mental health days, so maybe creating something like a mental health day for a student if they know something has happened.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a huge help.
Yeah, I feel like also among students too, I feel like it's a big thing where, you know, if a student does go through something, if you're not close to them, it's kind of like, oh, I know this thing happened, but let me not like acknowledge it, let me not talk about it. Or it's like, you know, if something happens, it's better to be quiet than to like ask, are you okay? Or like, do you need help? Because I feel like there's such this culture around like, if you don't know somebody or if you're not involved, stay out of it, which a lot of the times can be true. But I also feel like way too often we leave people to be alone with their thoughts when they experience something like losing a friend to violence, or if like they're stressed out about something and they can't focus in school. I feel like it needs to become more normalized to just empathize with them and not question like, oh, what did they do? Oh, are they bad? Or are they running with the wrong people? Because you know, everybody has different circumstances, and while like a lot of them can be really harmful, I feel like if a student needs the help, they shouldn't be shunned at school for what is happening outside of school.
Right. And building off that, I just think that people should keep more of their personal opinions to themselves when it comes to like someone that has experience with violence or has someone that they lost to violence, and really just try to
listen and truly be there, which like I definitely understand it could be difficult, not really close to somebody, but I don't know, it should be like some form, like a culture to where it's very intentional when someone is going through something, that like, oh, they give them a card, or they focus on in their art class making something that like you can tell there was thought put behind it, or you know, trying to become their friend, you know, trying to get them to open up, and like you said, not leaving people to deal with these things by themselves.
And I also add on too, because I don't want to talk about the specific person, but if they're watching, they probably know. I had a friend of mine where she lost her sister during the pandemic, and she was in class, and thankfully her teachers understood and like gave her some time off to process and not have to turn work. And then she lost her mother about a few months ago. And the problem I had with it too, because I was off campus, but like, you know, I'll still go up there if there's a problem. And basically,
She did.
like, I'll go up there. I said I'll go up there
Don't you
since she
worry.
was little. Like, don't do that. And basically, like, she was having trouble with her teachers where, like, you know, she just lost her mother and her mom in, like, a 2-year span. And they're still trying to, like, force her to do all this work. They're not really trying to understand her position. And that made me really frustrated, because it's like, you know, even simple things like that, like a teacher understanding what you're going through, maybe like, okay, I'll give you another week or 2 to do this assignment, or like, don't even worry about showing up to class, I understand. It's like there needs to be more, like, especially before a student acts out, because, you know, a lot of times violence or anger can be the result of just a lot of things happening back to back. But there needs to be a way to support students before they reach that breaking point. Because, you know, she's very soft-spoken. You know, if she doesn't have to speak up for herself, she usually won't. And, you know, I'm lucky that she now has teachers who understand and want to help her and want to, you know, help her succeed. But also, it shouldn't come down to, like, let's say if she was really, really depressed and tried to kill herself, or, you know, if she was starting to fail all her classes and she was thinking about dropping out, it should never get to that point where they start actually caring about how she felt when they know the event.
Right, I definitely agree.
What about you,
That's
Diane?
crazy, because I don't know, I just know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm just thinking, or the student you are talking about, I'm just thinking about how she was crying because of something her teacher told her about, all these assignments that she was just stacking on top of her, knowing her situation, and not that she wanted to be talk to about what was going on, but teachers weren't even trying to like understand her or begin to like have that type of conversation with her. And I know losing a mother is really hard, and so I feel like she really deserves so much more.
And that's what I was saying, like, about the humanity thing. I just think that the whole school system needs to be reformed as a, like, in its entirety, because they're not really teaching us how to be civilians and operate in life. Like, yes, the math is very important, and the books and the studies and the memorization of things that help us become good people in the workforce. That's great. But it's like, where's the empathy? Where's the realness? They love to talk about and complain about our social media and how we don't communicate in the world anymore and we don't know how to interact with each other. But it's like, a lot of the interactions are not pleasant, and just real life, like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just, life in itself is not prioritized. It's just something that I definitely feel like I got thrown into after school, and going straight into graduating through COVID and going straight into this adult stuff that I hate it here. But yeah, I feel like I definitely could have been more prepared to be living, and I'm not.
Just out there.
Yeah.
I feel like want to add on really quick too, where like, I think it's, and also a really big thing too, how about you said, like, you know, we're not really prepared to be actual people in the world. I feel like it's this really weird complex where it's like, you don't really show emotions because you'll be punished. Like, a lot could be kind of to certain things, but like, you know, then it's kind of like discouraging certain emotions while encouraging others. You know, I'll just say, including me, not a lot of people have the capacity to like fully experience things all the time, if that makes sense. And like, I feel like that's why it's so important to really meet people where they are, because, you know, especially when it comes to like caring about people, I don't know when it became like simpish or like childish to care about things and to like have feelings. I don't know if that's just part of our social media culture, if it's been like that forever.
Generation.
Yeah, it's like, you know, not to be like I was born in the wrong generation, but it's like, I think there's just something that went wrong. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
No, I'm not, because she was like, I hate that phrase. Don't ever say that phrase again. Okay.
My generation. Right. Like, it's like,
It is a little cringe.
It is cringy. It is cringy. I'm sorry.
Was it not said by this one?
You said it first. Anyway.
Sorry, guys.
That idea that like us as a generation, I feel like we should be the ones to bring that back, where especially older generations, they make fun of us for like the way we see things, the way we perceive things. But honestly, I think it needs to be normalized to like really feel the full range of human emotion, because that's what makes us people.
Right.
And you know, you can't have too much of one thing. And I feel like at the end of the day, it all comes back to, you know, how we regulate and how we express ourselves in a way that's productive.
And I love what you said. Like, that is truly what makes us people, and what makes us different from every other living thing on this planet is really our minds. So why not use them to our fullest capacity? But with that being said, I do want to stress the fact that our mind matter, our mental health matters, our safety matters. Like, everything about us and the things that we're going through matter, and they need to be prioritized. And that's why we do have this season. I know that you guys are probably sick of just seeing just us. Well, I don't know if they could ever get sick of just us.
You love us. Don't lie.
But we are really looking forward to having our youth on this season. And we just can't really wait to hear what's on their minds and the stories that they have to share. So if you have experienced violence, or you're a victim of youth or gang violence, we definitely want to hear your story or one of your lost loved ones' stories. And we would love to provide you with this, to come, like, invite you. I'm not even going to say provide. We would love to invite you to come share this platform with us to talk about that. So definitely sign up.
And if you are interested, we have a form down in the description box. And you can email us at kjkpthetake@gmail.com.
And don't forget to follow us on all of our social media at No Justice, No Peace and Unrestricted Revolution. And, you know, just show us some love, like, comment on our videos, and subscribe to see more of No Justice, No Peace and Unrestricted Revolution on our network. Bye.
Man, all money in. You know, stack, save. Look towards the future. Don't think of just right now. You know, we quick to just want it right now. You know, not only that, don't rush to get it. Put your plans and your goals in motion, and then you'll see it through. Oh man, that's most important, especially when you start getting older, because we don't realize like a lot of the things that we digested when we was younger really shows and comes and hits you when you get a little older. You know what I mean? We have this stigma when we're young and growing up in the urban community that we probably won't see 21 or we won't see 30. You know what I mean? So we don't look that far down. You know what I mean? So I think at 16, I would tell myself, man, take it easy. Don't put so much stress on myself at a young age, and to know that I'm gonna make it to be 30 and 40 and 50 years old.
We'll be very unstoppable if we come on together and do everything as one. And it'll be something that'll be very, very amazing to see if that ever happens. If everybody comes together as one and just put all the bad things aside and just focus on the main goal, which is to make our community better. So.
What type of physical health advice do you wish that you had at a younger age that you could still have today?
I would say to continue to move every day for at least 30 minutes and eat food in moderation. Be healthy. Eat your vegetables. Eat your vegetables, especially the green ones. They're good for you.
You heard it here first. 30 minutes a day, exercise, get moving, but eat them veggies. If you're not eating them veggies, that movement's not gonna do nothing, no good for you.
That's right, because 80% of losing weight and being healthy is your diet. You can't outwork a bad diet.
Ooh.